there are certain guys, and I won't name anyone, but
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
they say that they're into classic menswear, but they're wearing a suit from Express, or they're wearing, they're talking about a lot of fast fashion. And the issue with that is that there's here's the thing, there's nothing wrong. You whatever your budget will allow, that's where you need to go and that's what you need to spend. You know, I will not spend money from someone else's pockets. However, classic menswear, the whole purpose of it is for sustainability. I think a lot of people miss that aspect of classic menswear. It's to be able to sustain. If you look at menswear, if you think about, if you go back to when men were wearing suits in the late 1800s, early 1900s, to the suits that we wear today, not that much has changed. The fabrics may have changed, but you know, through and through, classic menswear has remained the same. Well, what I meant in that comment is simply just that these guys are talking about a lot of fast fashion items that will not last, a lot of fads and trends that are that are that are only here for a second.
So with that being said, I welcome to the Holsey Style, Jayce Thompson. I almost said JC again.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate it, man. I definitely did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were talking sometime last week when we were kind of prepping for this discussion. We were
Mhm.
talking a little bit about like when we had actually met, so to speak, on Instagram. And I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure how it is that I became acquainted with you and your work, if that's what we're going to call it. But for those who don't already know who you are, could you just give us a sense of who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Jayce Thompson. I run a channel on YouTube as well as Instagram called Esteemed Image, where I basically do review videos and style videos, just helping men, one, gain their confidence, but also teaching men the proper way to style themselves. And you're talking about how we met. I think I started following you through I Am Mr. Martinez. I think I found you. I,
Interesting. Did he like share something of mine or did he tell
I'm
you about
not
me?
sure. It
Was
was
he
either
talking shit? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I don't think so. Like it was either him or do you follow Young Pro Style?
Yes. Although I haven't seen him post anything in a while.
It may have been him, but it was one of the two, and I believe it was in 2020, like right after Menfluential. I believe one of them had either posted somehow, but it was around like 2020 when I connected with you. I believe I followed you first.
Ah, well,
Yes.
I guess that's a credit to me. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think Young Pro Style, he usually like he regularly posts things that he likes that he sees on Instagram, if I recall.
Yes.
Like I said, it's been a
Yes.
while since I've seen him post anything on Instagram, but I think a couple of times he was actually posting my images. So yeah, that might have been how it happened.
I think so. Like one of the two for sure.
Yeah. So that aside, you said that your Instagram is called, well, your Instagram and your YouTube is
Mhm.
called Esteemed Image, which I definitely want to talk about, like where you got the idea for that title. But
Mhm.
before we do that, I want to spend some time kind of like getting to know you and understanding
Sure.
your relationship to menswear. One thing that
Yeah.
always fascinates me with these conversations and the people that I meet who are involved in menswear is
Mhm.
kind of like how it is that they became interested in it in the first place. And it seems like everybody has a different backstory.
Right.
So I guess my first question would be, well, how is it that you became interested, if not in menswear, just style more generally?
It really started at a young age. So growing up in the home with my grandparents, and we grew up in Virginia, and we grew up in a rural area, and so we were Baptist, and so if you know anything about Baptists, they usually dress up for church. So the men, they wear a suit, full suit, tie, everything. The women wear dresses and they wear hats. So that was pretty much the starting point for me because we had to go to Wednesday night Bible study and we had to go to Sunday service. Sometimes it was multiple services, and we always had to dress up. So that was one thing, but I believe it really, for me, style, I guess it was a way for me to express myself. So I'm an only child. So life's kind of, you're lonely. So for me, style was a way that I could express myself. Like I played basketball, but some children have the creative outlet of drawing or building things. Well, that's not me. I'm not a handyman at all, but it was just something, I don't know, just watching my grandmother, she would always get my grandfather his clothes out on Saturday. She would iron his shirt. So she taught me how to properly iron my dress shirt, things like that. Or he would pick out his socks to match his shoes or to match, his trousers, just the small things. And so my grandfather he's one of 12. And so out of the 12, it's eight men and four women. So with that being said, they always dress, again, just being around them. And my mom, she has three brothers who they always dress well. My dad's side, just growing up around it, just kind of being immersed into it. We always had like magazines at home, so I would always look through magazines and to see what the outside world was doing. We didn't really grow up with social media. Back in the early mid 90s, you didn't have social media. You had magazines, and so you had books, and so that's kind of where it really started. And as I got older, trying new things, failing, trying again, learning new things, just taking ideas from men and women's fashion and kind of creating my own, my own lane. And so that's how I really got started into it.
I was just going to ask, do you recall what your attitude towards dressing up was? Because it seems common, or at least I should say it was for me when I
Hmm.
was growing up. I didn't like the idea of dressing up as a child. Like it just seemed abhorrent to me. So you're
Yes.
talking about like going to church, for example. Like, well, I didn't like going to church for other reasons, but one of the reasons
Right.
why I didn't like going to church was because we had to dress up and I didn't particularly like it. I don't think
Right.
like when you're a little kid, for most little kids, it's kind of like, I don't want to be told what to wear and I don't want to get all suited up, if you will. So do you recall kind of like what your attitude towards dressing up was when you were younger?
Yeah, it was I was very, I would say, pretty much apprehensive like you were. I mean, I prefer to be in casual clothes to, be comfortable. And so that's the interesting thing about it is that, classic menswear and formal menswear wasn't where I started. I used to wear, like streetwear clothes and baggy clothes, and I'm a short guy. Like terrible is terrible, but I mean, again, it just evolved into this thing where I think the older that I got, seeing how my life was going and how I was being treated, because I mean, the way I looked, I mean, let's be honest, you're wearing like a tall tee and some baggy shorts, you look like you're going to do some bad things, whether you are or not. That's just the reality of it. And so I think I just evolved from wearing those street clothes and streetwear into more classic wear because of where my life started taking me and the people that I was hanging around. So out of high school still very, very casual. College, I did 1 year of college, very, very casual. Then I went to the Air Force. And that's when things really shifted because it was so regimented and very strict in particular. And with the military, you have uniforms and it's structure, and so you begin to realize that you can do more with less because you only have a set number of uniforms, but that's all you wear. And so that's kind of where it started. I'll tell you exactly when it started. We
Please
had
do.
it just made me think about it. Because I remember the feeling that I felt. So I was tasked to go TDY to California to Anaheim. and I didn't have anything to wear, and it was a business casual conference, so I needed a suit. So I didn't have one. Outside of my blues, I didn't have anything to wear, and I was very, I won't say embarrassed, but I was very uncomfortable because I didn't know what to do. So I literally went to, we used to have what's called an airman's attic, which is essentially like a Goodwill for airmen, if that makes sense. They had old uniforms. I took an old uniform, went to Walmart, got some buttons, went to the tailor. Tailor put new buttons on it, and I had like a ready-made navy suit. It was terrible, but I had something. And so then it made me realize it's like, hey, if you're going to be around these people in these settings, you need to start thinking about, you know, menswear in a proper format. And that's kind of where the journey really began.
Okay. That's very interesting that your first kind of probably exposure probably isn't the correct word, but your first kind of like the first garment that really kind of like drew you to classic menswear, the
Mhm.
events being what they were, was actually a suit. That's very interesting to me. I don't think that that's most people's experience. It certainly was not mine.
Mhm. Yeah, it was, again, I think it was more so the feeling that I felt. It wasn't an incomplete feeling, but I felt out of place. And so just because, again,
And you're saying
now,
that's be I apologize for
yeah,
uh, interrupting you, but so you're saying you felt uncomfortable before prior to actually purchasing the suit and having it tailored, right? You felt
correct.
uncomfortable in that you felt like you weren't going to fit into the environment that you were moving into.
Absolutely. So because I knew that we had to wear our uniform one time, like for a formal event in the evening, but the rest of the time we had to dress business casual. And again, I didn't have anything because all my clothes were just casual, like jeans, shirts, graphic tees, stuff like that. So I didn't have anything. So I just felt very, again, out of place. And so that's when I realized you need to start getting more casual pieces. So I had the Air Force suit, but then I started getting more casual pieces like shirts and chinos and things like that, and started just building on that until I was able to finally purchase an actual, suit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So, kind of, you'd explain out kind of what the experience was like when you wore that first suit. How did you
Um,
feel?
the I made it work. Uh, I was able to also. I ended up purchasing like a sport jacket from Goodwill that I had tailored as well. So I had those two items with me, and I kind of mixed and matched throughout because we were only there for about 3 days, so it wasn't a long period of time. But I remember people, they actually were very receptive and like, oh, that was cool that you took this Air Force uniform and made it your own. Because again, like I said, I changed the buttons so it made it look a little bit different, but people knew that it was blues, but it wasn't the worst thing ever, if that makes sense. So I felt okay, but again, I realized I'm like, hey, you really, when you get home, you need to, get some money
Study.
together. Yeah, you need to, get your stuff together so you can get you an actual suit, so you don't have those feelings. No one ever wants to feel out of place. It doesn't matter where you are, who you're with, friends or not. You don't ever want to feel out of place, and the easiest way to feel out of place is be underdressed or not properly dressed.
Yeah, or overdressed.
Yeah,
That certainly
or
happened on
overdressed.
more than one occasion.
Absolutely.
That was actually one of the hardest lessons I had to learn when I first started like dressing up. Like,
Mhm.
not I just didn't have a good understanding of context, which is odd because you think that would be the thing that most people would be most receptive to. Most
Right.
people probably know that you don't need to wear a suit to McDonald's, which is not to
Yeah.
say which is not to say
Right.
that I ever wore a suit to McDonald's, but
No,
I
I get
did
you.
wear kind of like suits to places where perhaps I didn't need to. But
Oh yeah, we've all done it. I mean, or you wear something casual when you needed to dress up, and it's like,
yeah.
okay, I have on jeans. It's like you want to slowly back away into the bushes. I mean, I get it, but I think it just comes with time, and a
Yeah,
lot of trial. a lot of error, but you know, you grow into it. But even then, going back to, talking about social media was kind of coming into its own in 2010, but still, social media was not what it is today. So it was still
In its infancy, if
difficult.
you will.
Yeah, so to be able to go and have a platform like Pinterest where you can type in and search for exactly what you're looking for, that didn't exist. To search it through Instagram and hashtags, TikTok, it was like you said in its very, infantile stages. So you didn't have, you know, all these. It's a luxury. Social media is a luxury in its own because you had to figure it out on your own. You know.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to say here. The first is concerning like understanding the context for dressing. It seems like there's like a, I don't know how to explain this very well, but it seems like there's kind of like a stage of development with dressing where like when you first start out and you're not comfortable in your clothing, you really want to be receptive to the context, because if you're not dressed according to the context, you're going to be even more uncomfortable than you
Yes.
actually are. At least this is
Yeah.
kind of my perception. But it
Yeah.
seems like there's also like a stage of development in dressing. And this is not to say that I've arrived at this point,
Mhm.
but it seems like there's also a stage where you can get to the point where it's like, well, despite the context, I can wear whatever I want because I
Yeah.
feel comfortable in my clothes, and the context does not affect my self-esteem concerning what it is that I'm wearing. So if I want to wear a suit, I can just wear a suit, even if the context doesn't necessarily call for it.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of like when you first start going to the gym. When you first walk into the gym, you may have on like some regular shorts and a regular t-shirt, a cotton t-shirt, right? But you're working out, it's uncomfortable. You're like, hey, this is odd, but I'm doing it. You keep going. And then, like you said, then it just gets to the point where the guys, they can pretty much work out in whatever shoes, or they work out barefoot because they're comfortable enough with the exercises. I feel like style is one of those things where it's a muscle that you have to develop. I'm not even at that place where I can wear whatever, whenever, and just be like, "Hey, I'm here and I'm comfortable." Mm-mm. I'm not there at all. I still have my moments where I'm like, I'll ask my girlfriend all the time, like, "Hey, does this look okay? Does this make sense for, where are we going? Who's going to be there? What will we be doing?" Just so I can make sure I'm comfortable, because although I can be, I don't want to say, I don't know the proper term for it, but I'm like in what an introvert extrovert, like I don't know, like I get very nervous around people, and so I
Yeah,
try to,
social anxiety, maybe.
yeah, some social anxiety. So I haven't reached that pinnacle. I feel like that's the pinnacle of style where you can just kind of do whatever, and it's like, I'm here, I've arrived, take me as I
Yeah.
am. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've arrived. And there are some guys like Angel Ramos,
Like
or
Ethan Wong is who I have in mind. Ethan
yeah,
Wong. I don't know if you
yes,
follow Ethan Wong, and also Heinrich Wilberg. I'm not sure if you're
yes.
familiar with him as well.
These guys
Like,
could just show up in
and
whatever
whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's
and
really
look
impressive.
fantastic all the time. It doesn't matter where they are. Like I said, I haven't gotten there yet.
Me
And I don't
either.
know
Yeah.
if I ever will.
Yeah. Let's hope that, well, that's kind of in part, at least, I think, what I would like to achieve in my relationship with dressing. I would like to get to such a point where I don't know if I could ever get to the point where I'm not, because I'm a human being, I'm not a
Yeah,
sociopath. So I don't
yeah,
think I could ever get to the point where I just like completely disregard
right.
context. There's
Yeah.
probably always going to be a certain level of like anxiety, but I would
Hmm.
like to get a point where like my confidence is like whatever, and that the 90%, I feel like I could just wear whatever it is that I want, even if
Right.
it's a little bit awkward, I guess.
Right. And I mean, I think it becomes like, I think the word that comes to mind when I'm thinking about it is like effortless. I want, my style to be more effortless, where it just
Mm,
kind of flows, where it's not, that's where I feel like the pinnacle of being a true sartorial is, it just flows, because you know all the rules and you know how to break the rules without it being weird, without it being, out of place or out of context.
Yeah, or even like devastating to you when you wear it. You don't feel
Yes.
like so uncomfortable in your, I was going to say your own skin, but maybe your own suit would be the more appropriate thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there was another thing that you brought up that I want to discuss, and
Hmm.
you were talking about when you were first learning how to dress according
Hmm.
to the rules of classic menswear, if you will, and not having access or not
Hmm.
having the kind of access that you have today to social media because it was in, as we said, a certain stage of infancy. So,
Right.
how do you think learning how to dress in an environment that did not include social media as we know it, how do you think that that influenced the way that you dress, if at all?
I think it had a lot to do with it because I had to learn from my environment. Or, you have magazines, but most magazines, even GQ magazine, well, back then, like GQ, you saw more suits in GQ back then. So, like with GQ, it's very now you have a lot more casual. It's more of a casual editorial, but back then, you could find some suits and things like that. So I think for me, it allowed me because I think it allowed me the room to actually grow and to properly learn because there are so many people on social media doing it wrong. And well, that's my opinion. I'll say that that's my personal opinion, but I feel like a lot of people are doing it wrong. And so it's leading a lot of men down a destructive path where back then you kind of had to see there was always a guy in your community or neighborhood that you're like, man, that guy really dresses well, or you know, even women. I mean, you could take certain style aspects from women, not, and that's a whole nuanced thing in itself, but you can take things from everyone in different cultures. And I think that helped me as well, being around people from all over the world, all over the United States, and seeing them. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't think about putting that together, but let me try it. I didn't think about these fabrics, let me try it. And then it just, again, it just evolved. It's been a journey, a true journey of, ups and downs.
Yeah. So you said something there that's interesting. I want you to expound on it a little bit. So you
Mhm.
said, in your opinion, many men on social media who are involved in classic menswear are doing it wrong. So what did you mean by that?
Well, I think some men, so there are certain guys, and I won't name anyone, but
Yeah,
they
that's fine. That's fine.
say they say that they're into classic menswear, but they're wearing a suit from Express, or they're wearing, they're talking about a lot of fast fashion. And the issue with that is that there's here's the thing, there's nothing wrong. You whatever your budget will allow, that's where you need to go and that's what you need to spend. You know, I will not spend money from someone else's pockets. However, classic menswear, the whole purpose of it is for sustainability. I think a lot of people miss that aspect of classic menswear. It's to be able to sustain. If you look at menswear, if you think about, if you go back to when men were wearing suits in the late 1800s, early 1900s, to the suits that we wear today, not that much has changed. The fabrics may have changed, but you know, through and through, classic menswear has remained the same. Well, what I meant in that comment is simply just that these guys are talking about a lot of fast fashion items that will not last, a lot of fads and trends that are that are that are only here for a second, that won't last. Now there's nothing wrong with talking about your classic sneaker or things like that, but certain like certain brands and certain styles don't need to be talked about when you're talking about classic menswear, in my opinion, because it's not classic menswear.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make. And I think, and I'm not saying this as if I have not been guilty of it myself, because I certainly have.
Oh, we all
There's
have.
yeah, well, there's also kind of like, it seems like a stage in your development of learning how to dress in a classic manner, if you will, where you're going to have a period of excess. And that kind of lends itself more to kind of consumer culture than it does, in my opinion, classic menswear. Because, as you said, the primary purpose of classic menswear, or one of the purposes, is that you're purchasing items that are going to last for a
Right.
very long time.
Right.
And when you first kind of get involved in this space and you just kind of purchase a lot, at least this was my experience, you start to
Mhm.
purchase a lot of things because you don't necessarily know what it
Mhm.
is that you should or should not
Right.
wear, or what it is that you can or cannot use, or how necessarily to use it. And you can kind of
Right.
like get caught up in that bubble, even though you're technically speaking buying items that are under the umbrella of classic menswear.
Yes.
Did you have a stage like that where you had kind of like this excess?
Oh yeah. I'll tell you, between about 2012 to about mm, probably about 2015, I'll be honest. And the reason why I had a lot of access is because, like you said, you really don't know what to get. You're just grabbing at straws at a certain point. Like, hey, I saw this, you want everything. And you learn, like, man, I shouldn't have bought that shirt over here, but this shirt was great. Oh man, these jeans sucked, but these jeans were great. Or, you have an array, or also you don't even know where to get these items. So you start at your local Express, or you start at H&M, because that's all, like you said, because of the consumer, mindset. That's all you know. And then you realize, oh wait, if I spend a little extra money, I can go to this place and get a better quality polo, you know. Um, and it's just about, again, a lot of trial and error. But I know for me, it was a pretty big stint until I started really. I think when I started learning, like, okay, you can find nicer items at places like J. Crew and Banana Republic, and then I started buying those items and replacing items. And I realized, what can I do to stop buying all this stuff, because it was becoming detrimental, because I was just spending so much money. So what can I do to, have a sustainable wardrobe? Then I started learning about, actually it was a friend of mine who taught me about, hey man, look at neutrals, because he draws, he paints and he draws. And so he's like, hey man, look at the color wheel, start thinking about these things, and just giving me like ideas, and like, stick to these neutral colors. That way you can mix and match. You don't need a lot of clothes. And then again, that was like a pivot in about 2015 that kind of led me down the path, which has evolved into where I am today.
Yeah, it seems too like speaking of the excess, it seems like there's just a very uncomfortable part, and I'm probably still in this stage myself, but there's a very uncomfortable part, or it seems almost, how do I put it? It seems almost necessary to
Mhm.
get a lot of things, not that you
Yeah.
necessarily have to buy them off the rack, even if you're buying vintage items, but you
Right.
have to kind of like try a lot of stuff to really get a good sense of what it is that works, for you, like
Absolutely.
what it is that you prefer, not only kind of like as far as the garments themselves are concerned,
Mhm.
if for example you do or do not like sport coats, but
Yeah.
also the fit of those garments. And I've just
Yeah.
found that like recently I've made two purchases that, excuse my language, but they got me fucked up. They really got me fucked up
Yeah.
because once I put them on
Uh-huh.
and I wore them out, I was like, oh, I love this so much. I love it so much. And it's causing me to kind of like recalibrate what it
Yes.
is that I like. So I'll just tell you, like, the examples are like, I purchased a pair of vintage polo trousers that are called Andrew trousers, which are a
Okay.
trouser that were popular in the 90s.
Mhm.
And I also purchased a pair of jeans from Berg and Berg. I'm actually going to do a review of that uh,
Are
pair
they
of jeans.
silvish? Are they silvish denim?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh,
But
okay.
it
'Cause
wasn't
I
necessarily the quality of the fabric, although the quality of the fabric is excellent. It was
Mhm.
the fit. So
Okay.
as far as the Andrew trousers go, they have a very, very high rise. So they sit above the belly button about
Awesome.
an inch. And I was like, I don't want to wear anything that doesn't have a rise this high ever again. But they're also very wide legged. So they have like I think there's a 18-inch hole
Oh,
at the
wow.
bottom of the
Yeah.
trousers. Yeah, so pretty wide. And then I had
Mhm.
a similar experience with the Bergen Berg trousers, very high rise, very
Mhm.
comfortable on the way, straight leg. But see, like I've been involved in menswear now. I don't know what it technically would be. What it's 2017, probably coming up on 5 years.
Mhm.
And I'm 5 years in, and I just learned that I like trousers that have a much higher rise than even high rise trousers, and
It's
I
the
prefer
best
a
thing
wider
ever.
fit. But
High
now, what am I
rise
supposed to do with
trousers.
all these trousers?
High rise trousers are so good. And I will tell you, I know we're pivoting a little bit, but I just want to say this real quick. Like when we have our clients come in, that is the one thing that we push. I'm like, try it, and we all tell them try it. If you don't like it, we'll work it out in the end, but try it. And 99% of the time they're like, whoa, it's just a more comfortable fit, Even I'm a short guy, which is why I started doing higher, rise trousers to give the illusion that I have longer legs. But I prefer it because I don't know, it's just more comfortable. I don't know. It's like the best thing ever. And I
Yeah,
only recently discovered this probably about a couple years ago myself.
yeah. If you had to guess, how many pairs of trousers did you have to purchase before you gained, so to speak, that insight? Do you
Custom
even want to say it?
or
Are you embarrassed? Just kidding.
probably about okay, because there was a period of time when I probably had like about almost 200 pair of shoes, about let's just say I had an excessive closet, so probably for trousers, probably over 100 pair, no lie.
Wow.
And that is including denim, chinos, like the whole gamut. Like, yeah. It's been a lot of trial and error, and probably a lot more error than So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's the same for me. I don't think I ever had 100 pairs of trousers, but I probably got to the point where I purchased probably somewhere between 20 and 30 before I
yeah,
really discovered what it is that I really, really like. At least I think I have. Maybe I'll buy another pair of trousers and decide that I don't like these ones either. Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
right,
I don't
yeah.
want to spend much more money.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think that was a key for me too. Money, especially if someone's watching this, especially now the way things are. It's like if you have a closet full of stuff. Here's what I did. I challenged myself and threw a bunch of stuff away. And I realized I don't miss this stuff.
Mm,
Because think about it. In your closet, it can be different for you, but I know for me, I would only gravitate towards certain items. So why keep the rest? You're not wearing it, and I got rid of it and it was great. And, you know, but yeah, a lot of money has been spent. If I really sat down and like kind of went through, even now, I need to go and have another purge because I only wear like one pair of denim and I have maybe five in there. The only trousers that I wear are my suit trousers now. I mean, but it's an evolution. It's a journey. You keep evolving. So yeah.
yeah. So speaking of journey, I want to talk a little bit about your journey on
Mhm.
YouTube and on Instagram. So
Mm.
what kind of motivated you to, well, before we talk about what motivated you to start a YouTube and start sharing your style on Instagram, I want to know a little bit about how you came up with the name for your Instagram handle and YouTube channel.
Yeah. So back in it was like 2017, 2018. I was actually sitting in my apartment and I was like, I want to create. Like my friends would always tell me, hey, you need to develop a platform or something where you teach men what you do. I'd have colleagues, supervisors, everyone would always ask me, hey, I'm going to this event. What should I wear? Things like that, always asking me for style advice. And so I was like, what can I do and what can I create that's going to be, you know, something that stands out, that represents where I'm trying to go, And so I really just did like a brainstorm session and came up. The name behind esteemed image is really because when I think of my image, it gives me, I want other men when they develop their image to get that self-esteem as well. So that's where it kind of came with like esteemed image because I feel like your image does play a huge part in your personal self-esteem. And so it kind of evolved into that. And I was like, okay, esteemed image. I hated it at first.
Why?
I don't know. I was like, does this even work? But to me, when I hear it, it sounds like, now, and it's just throughout the years, like when I hear it, it sounds like something very prestigious to me,
Hmm.
you know, something that if you saw it, it's like esteemed image. Oh, okay. What is this about? It's intriguing to me. And so I don't know, I just stuck with it.
Yeah, I really like it. Esteemed image. I think it's
Thank
cool.
you.
A lot of people do the thing that I did. It's like da 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 style. So, at least you have a name that is unique.
Well, I did start off, there was like J style, Jayce Thompson. Like, I mean, it has been, I tried to incorporate my name, and I was just like, I don't like it. Like your like the Hosey style, like it works. It has a ring to it. You know, Mine is just Jayce. I don't know. It just didn't work. So I had to be a little bit more creative. So
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your kind of motivation for. I think you alluded to it a little bit, talking
mhm,
about your friends who were trying to encourage you to share what it is that you were doing on a
mhm.
platform. But maybe we go a little bit deeper there. Like, what really motivated you to both start a YouTube channel and share it in that format, and also, I don't know which one you did first, but also what or why it is that you started the Instagram and sharing stuff on Instagram.
Yeah. With the Instagram, I've had an Instagram for a long time, and it kind of just, how you can change your handle.
Yeah.
It just evolved into that. I've had an Instagram probably since the conception of Instagram. But with YouTube, it started officially in 2019. But my goal then, and it's still a goal now, is like I said, it's just to teach men, true style, and really show them, how to dress, because I see a lot of men, they do try, they want to dress better, whether they're young, middle age, or older. I mean, I have people tell me all the time, like, I want to do this. I just don't know where to start, what to buy, where to go. And that's really the motivation. Um, it's a little bit easier for me with Instagram, and I know we'll talk about that. As some people have it easier on YouTube, but I find it that because of the way our attention spans have evolved, it's one of those things where, because Instagram is so quick, that you can get out that same concept in 15 to 30 seconds that you could in a 3 to 5 minute video, if that makes sense. Um, so with Instagram, for me, it's been a journey. It's been, again, like I said, I've been on Instagram over 10, yeah, about 10 plus years at this point. So it's one of those things where it's like, to see my journey, it hasn't always been, the bulk of what you see now has happened within the last 6 months. Everything else has been a slow progression, but I've tried to be as consistent as possible with still showing up and putting out that information, regardless of what I've had, going on in my personal life. With YouTube, again, I do like the longer form content, but for my audience right now, they enjoy the short burst of content that I create for them.
Yeah. So there was a couple of interesting things you said there. And I want to talk a little bit more about your kind of like personal experience, because unique, and I think this is very unique to you, you
Mhm.
actually work in a bespoke shop. But
Yes.
before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of like your success on Instagram, because
Mhm.
when we started following each other, I can't remember how many subscribers you had, but I seem to remember it being under 10,000. I might
Oh, it
be.
was way under 10,000. When here's the thing, literally December of last year, I had about 4,000 subscribers. And I started
We're
working at
talking 6 months ago, right?
yes, yes. So I started working at Bearcat, and I'll explain more, but just to give you the context of Instagram and the journey of Instagram, started working there in October. I started posting reels late I think it was probably in December. I finally got on the bandwagon of reels. It was literally me just taking my camera, panning it up from my feet up to the full outfit and showing my outfit of the day. That's it. So I went from about 4,300 subscribers to about 5,000 in like January. Actually, no, no, no. I went from about 4,100 to about 4,700 in January. In January, I believe it was January or either February, I posted a reel about, I think it was, the anatomy of a dress shirt. And it took me over the 5,000 mark. I said, oh, okay, cool. Well, in between, and I'll get into the nuance of how it ended up working out. But in March, I posted the reel that really catapulted my follower base. It was, I think it was titled "The Anatomy of a Custom Suit" or "Why You Need a Custom Suit," something like that. But anyway, it took me from 5,000 to 21,000 in 2 weeks.
That one video,
Yes,
or that one
it
reel
was
rather. But
it was nuts. And what's crazy about that reel is that when I first posted it, I posted it on like March the 12th. And actually, if you don't mind, I will send you, if you want, I can send you the screenshots because I like documented it.
yeah, absolutely. That I think that's really
Um,
cool.
so I documented it because I was like, whoa. So I posted it on like March the 12th. It wasn't until about March the 22nd that it gained traction and it started to grow. Um, so that evolved. And then I've had a couple of other reels to kind of take me on to where I am now. And I'm at about 23.8 thousand, I believe, at this point. So in 6 months' time, I went from pretty much right under 5,000 to almost 24,000 subscribers,
That's
followers.
that's incredible growth. How many views did the reel that you were referring to? How many views did it get?
It only had 400,000.
Only?
Yeah. Well, because some people have like millions. Like
Yeah.
I know people who they have millions and millions of views that draw in this traffic. But when it just crossed like the 400,000 mark. So at the time, it was only at about maybe right at 300,000 views, which in perspective, it's not a lot. The impressions were more. I had probably about a 500,000 impressions. So an impression is just it going across the screen. So it went across 500,000 screens, but only about at this point about 400,000 people actually sat and watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good. I mean, I'm kind of like new. Well, I shouldn't say new to the Reels thing. I kind of like fell off the Reels wagon, but it
Mhm,
wasn't to do anything with like it being successful or not. Actually,
mhm.
I had the biggest leap in growth on my Instagram when I started doing the kind of thing that you were doing initially,
Yeah.
taking shots of the outfits. I didn't do necessarily from like the shoes up or anything, but it was just kind of like highlighting different aspects of the outfit. And
Right.
some of those now have grown to like there's a lot of them have probably stalled out, but some of them got up to like 40,000. But I very quickly jumped from like 900 to like 2,000
Yes.
just with those shots. And I was like,
Yes.
I stopped doing it because I got too busy with other things. But I was like, man, after I saw your growth, I was like, I need to get back on that Reels game one way or another, find a way to do the
Yeah.
Reels thing. But yeah, I was just
And
really impressed with your growth on Instagram.
thank you. And I'll tell you, in like January, between January and February, one of the things that I did, because a lot of people always ask me, like, what's the secret? And I'm like, I literally went into the Instagram business like page and they post articles, they post reels or like how to do it. That's all I did. I read the information. And one of the things, so like YouTube, like YouTube likes listicle videos where it's like 5 ways to do this or the 10 best this. YouTube loves that type of content. So does Instagram. But
Mm,
the key for me is not the actual reel itself, it's the trending audio. So the audio that I picked, the guy who created the beat, it like exploded. And that's what drew the traffic to, that specific reel. And what I'll tell you, one of the things that I do is I always try to find reels that it has a little arrow pointing up. If you see the song title at the bottom and you see a little arrow, it points to the right, like up to the right. If you see it, that means it's a trending audio. That means
mm,
Instagram likes it. Instagram's like, hey, I like this, so and so that's the type of audios that I would use. Also, something that it doesn't work for me, but it works for other people. Original audios, like just them speaking. Um, there's a guy, his audience grew from a couple of hundred to he's over 10K now in a matter of months, but he only does original audio. So he talks, this is what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing these jeans with this shirt, these shoes. It's his outfit of the day. And that's the type of content that he does. And his channel has exploded. And so I will say for you, if what was working for you is to show the outfits in different aspects, like try that again, because that's what your audience liked. And that's the thing too, it's going to be up to your audience. Like, what does your audience like to see? Like, uh, I try to post like fragrance reels. My audience, nah, they do okay because I have a larger audience. It's kind of by default. But my audience would rather see me put out the video. For example, the anatomy of a suit jacket. They eat that type of content up. And so I'd say try that out.
yeah, I definitely got to get back on that. There's something else I was going to say about that. I
Mhm.
forgot what it was. It seems like you haven't been focusing as much on your YouTube lately. And you said that that's partly just because it seems like the shorter form content is more preferable. I
Well,
guess I don't go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting what you're pointing out about people's kind of like attention span and using reels to actually communicate your message just in a shorter format, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll attribute that to my girlfriend because I'll be honest, I stopped really focusing on YouTube because it wasn't growing the way I wanted it to, if I'll be honest. And it was really starting to wear me down. And I just said last year, it was like June. I said, you know what? I'm not I was I was right under 500 subscribers, by the way. I said, I'm just gonna stop making YouTube videos. I'm just gonna do what I gotta do. I posted 2 videos. It was, when I got my watch, I posted that. But really, I haven't posted any content in last year. And somehow I'm at like 775 now, and I was under 5. It's weird how it has happened. So I've been considering going back, but I'll be honest, YouTube puts me in a bad mental space. So I'm like, I leave it where it's at. It's great and I do love it. But again, also Instagram is a lot easier to generate leads that I can easily convert, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit easier for me to from the business side of things. It's easier to access the business that way versus YouTube, but I still love YouTube. And so I'm like, it's easier for me to make a reel. I can make 2, 3 reels in the time it'll take me to make one video. So but I have a love-hate relationship with YouTube. So
No,
I can,
I to be honest, I have the same kind of experience with YouTube. It's kind of weird because you have like really high highs where you like feel
mm,
really good about something that you created, and then maybe
mhm,
it'll start to do well,
yeah,
and then you'll put out stuff that you're really proud of, and then nobody really wants to watch it.
yep,
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. It just kind of messes with you mentally. I've always just thought, well, it's part of the journey. I'm going to try to take what it is that I can learn from my videos, look at the analytics, interpret them as best as I can, and try to
yeah,
improve going forward. And hopefully in the
oh
future,
yeah.
it'll start to pick up more. But I know exactly what it is that you're talking about. Sometimes it could just be a slog.
Yeah, and I mean, and what's crazy about it is that like the video, like you said, it's the video that you're like, man, everything. I mean, it's the perfect video, right? And you post it, you're like, this is the one. You get 10 views, and you're like, what the heck? But then it's the video that the audio wasn't right. The shot is blurry. You can barely hear yourself. That everybody's like, oh, that was such a great video, and you're like, why? Why YouTube? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's again, it's a love hate relationship. But like you said, it's once you cross that threshold, it like opens up a whole new world. It's kind of like with Instagram. Like when you cross that 10,000 threshold, it like explodes. I think the 10,000 on Instagram is kind of the equivalent to the 1,000 on like YouTube, And to get
Yeah,
to 1,000 is why is it so difficult?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of they make it so that the cream rises to the top. Seems
Yeah.
almost like I don't know, the YouTube universe. They're just kind of like, well, if you can stick it out to 1,000 subscribers, if you can, convince 1,000 people to subscribe, then we'll start
Mhm.
rewarding you in that
Yep.
algorithm. I don't know. I've talked to Robert. I don't know if you follow Robert Jones's
Yes.
Instagram and YouTube page. I've talked to him kind of a lot about this because at certain points of time, I just get really discouraged with YouTube,
Mhm.
and he's kind of just always like reminding me, as like, dude, don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
just it takes a little bit of time, and now it seems like, for example, I think when I first started following him, I can't remember how many subscribers he had. It might have been
Mhm.
just over 1,000. And now he's already at, I think he's encroaching on 6,000. So I
Yeah.
think if you're correct, there's just kind of like you got to meet a certain threshold. And then after that, they
Oh,
start
yeah.
feeding it to people. So I'm just in the meantime, I'm just like, well, I'm not there yet, but this is just an opportunity for me to try to make the content as best as I possibly can so that when I
Yeah.
do get to that stage, my growth will accelerate even more.
That and I'm gonna be honest with you. I started thinking about it this way, especially with Instagram, and I'm trying to develop that same mindset with YouTube. Is that it's okay that nobody's looking at your content because you're building a catalog. So then when they do come, they could just sit there and just, oh man, he has 100 videos. Wow. Versus, oh, you went viral on the first video. What they gonna look at now?
Yeah.
Or the second video, you want them to stay on your content and fall in love with who you are and your content. And so I was actually grateful when I started having the growth. People would go way back as far as they could and like old posts, but they were like, oh man, because they had something to actually look at. And I never understood that concept until I hit that market and was like, oh, that makes sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, when I first started doing Instagram myself, the way that I kind of thought about it was actually creating a catalog, but for
Mhm.
myself. Like I was thinking like
Yeah.
at some point I could reach the point where I have so many outfits that I
Hmm.
could actually just like stop putting out pictures. This is of
Yeah.
course a naive view at that time. But I could stop putting out pictures and then I could just go back and reference what it is that I wore on a particular day and I could wear
Hmm.
that. Like I was trying to like in part create a catalog
I
for
got you.
myself. But yeah,
So,
I'm
question.
hoping that I have enough backlog content so at the
Mhm.
point that my channel starts to accelerate, people have enough stuff to just go through and have
Oh
fun
yeah,
with.
they will. I mean, they always do, unless you start to archive it. But yeah, I mean, if it's there, you just fall into the rabbit hole. I do have a question for you. Did you start off with YouTube or Instagram first?
I started off with Instagram. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so I was probably like before I created my YouTube, I think yeah, I created my YouTube like just over a year ago.
Oh, okay, I got you. I
Yeah,
got
so I was probably on Instagram. Well, I was on Instagram, but it was just personal stuff, you know.
you.
Started doing like the menswear thing probably like 3, maybe 4 years ago, but it was like
Gotcha.
it changed over time. Initially, I was just like I was really interested in ties. So I did one of these things where I was like taking the picture just from like the chin to like the bottom of my chest so you could see like the top, kind of like
Yes,
what the
I
dress
do.
chest.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like his content. I was doing it like that. And then I got to the point where it's like, well, I like ties. I love ties. But then I started to get interested in jackets and I started
Hmm.
getting interested in trousers. And so
Right,
I just developed a more conventional, if you will, kind of
right.
Instagram, at least in the menswear space.
I got you. Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Yeah. So I want to transition to talking a little bit more about kind of like your work experience, because as I said before and
Mhm.
referenced, you work in a bespoke shop. I don't know if that's the correct reference. I just think of it as a bespoke shop. So
Yeah,
how did you get into that position to begin with?
yeah. So I've been knowing. So the owner, her name is Janine Follett, and the shop is called Bearcat Bespoke. And so, like I said, going through my journey, I was like, I needed a suit. So I'll give you a brief backstory. My girlfriend and I had a wedding to go to. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to buy a suit from Suit Supply. I went through and did the like they said, and they were like, based off of your measurements, this is the size that you need. Perfect. I ordered the suit, it comes in. It fits like shit. Take it to a tailor, she does what she can. I hated it. I wasn't as comfortable as I wanted to be. I mean, it looked okay, but spending almost what 500-600 bucks for a suit, spending another $200 to get it tailored, you're at about 700 to 800 to 900 bucks at that point. Well, could have just went and bought a custom suit at that point. And so I was actually doing a photo shoot. Um, it was like in the late spring, and I was downtown Little Rock, and I was actually by Bearcat. And I was like, oh, what's this? Because I looked up and saw it and it said Bearcat Bespoke. I was like, hmm. So I went home, did my research, and I called and I wanted to set up a consultation. And so this was in 2018, and I got my first suit. And it's been, I just been getting suits, since then. And so Janan and I have developed a great relationship. What I like about Bearcat is that we do everything on a one-to-one basis. So we are by appointment only. So if you come in, it's just going to be you and I, or maybe the three of us, and we're going to sit down. You can have a drink. We're going to talk. We're going to get to know you. You get to know us, and it's going to be very personable. It's not going to be transactional where, oh, you need to buy this suit, because a suit doesn't fit every person's needs. It's just a fact. Some people may just need a shirt. So let's see, we're in 2022. So the beginning of 2020, I believe it was February, may have been March, she asked me how would I like to come work for her. So fast forward, COVID happened. So I didn't get to actually start until October of last year. Started working at Bearcat, just really learning as much as I can. And the cool part about, like I said, we developed that relationship, so she understood my passion for menswear. She understood that, oh, okay, this guy's actually knowledgeable. He knows somewhat of what he's talking about. He likes to read, you know, these magazines. He's read books, so he knows what he's talking about. He would be a good asset. And so it just developed, not only did we develop a good friendship over time, but we've developed, we've become very close, almost like family. So now I'm working in the shop pretty much every day. We have clients come through. most days of the week. I work on a regular basis, pretty much Monday through Saturday. That's after my day job, but I love it.
So let give me a better sense of what it is that you do. I mean, are you working as a tailor? Like what specifically do you do at Bearcat?
So basically, she's the creative director, and so basically, I fill the role as pretty much like assistant creative director, but also we are we don't actually tailor clothes. I'll say that up front. I tell everybody I do not cut and sew clothing. I am more of a clothier or a stylist, so I will help you pick the fabric, go through. I will measure you. I will tell you what you need to do. I will help you create. We do wardrobe packages for clients, and so we do have a bespoke option that we do made to measure and we do also bespoke. And our bespoke items are actually, um, do you know who Ian is from Cat and the Dandy?
No, I don't.
Well, they have a shop in New York, but they also have a shop right off Savile Row, and so we deal with them as well. And so with our Scabal fabrics and our Gladson and is it Huddersfield, and it's one more fabric I can't think of right now, but those are going to be more of our bespoke options. But we also have made to measure options as well.
Hmm, I see. So how long have you worked there?
Since October of 2021.
Okay, so you're coming up on a year here.
Mhm.
Okay. So what has that experience kind of like been like? Like what have you learned about menswear, about how men dress, or
Mhm.
just in general from that position?
I've actually learned a lot. So a lot of it is the trained eye. So sometimes when you see a garment, you're like, man, that looks good. But then you'll have someone else come in and be like, I don't know if you've ever had a fitting done before, but with a fitting, we take all the measurements. So that's one thing is how to properly measure and what you need to measure to make sure that the garment fits properly. But also, it's the nuanced things, like I said, the trained eye. So, like, I can tell now if someone's arms are forward or backward, depending on the wrinkles in the jacket. Um, Someone has erect posture or sloping shoulders, or one of their hips may sit higher than the other. It's just something that you learn over time by looking at different body types and shapes. You know, everybody you can have two men come in that's 5'10", 180 pounds, and they look completely different. Their suit's going to fit completely different. you know and so I think it's been more of, I've learned a lot of finite details. I can see things now. You can see the roll in the collar. It's like, hey, you need to lower the collar, or sometimes when the lapel start to like bulge, you need to either shorten or lengthen the lapel, fix the button stance because the jacket is not proportionate. Just it's been about the small details. And I think that's why I've made the comment about men talking about classic menswear, but it's like, no, because it's like, nah, you have really no idea, because you learn about fabrics, you learn about the weight of fabrics, these things matter, touching different fabrics, seeing it in, certain fabrics or different cuts. It's like, some guys, not every guy can do a slim trouser. Every guy wants to, but it doesn't work for every guy. The high-waisted trouser doesn't work for every guy either, depending on their body type, you know? So it's just learning different body types and how to accommodate those body types. That's been the coolest thing.
Yeah, how do you think that that position has informed, if at all, your own style?
It definitely makes me take a second look at myself and what I wear, how I wear it, to make sure it's proportionate to my body. I am a smaller guy, but still, everybody thinks, like, when they come into the shop, all the men think that, well, I wish I could be your size. And it's like, no, 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 you don't. because I have my own issues that I have to deal with when it comes to style. You know, um, I have pretty much, I always tell like our super tall clients, I'm like, I kind of have the same issues you do, just on the opposite end of the spectrum, you know, where things are too long for me and too big, and things are too short and too small for you. We have the same issues, just on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think that, being in the shop has taught me, it's like, hey, it's also allowed me to give people a lot of grace, because I also realized that to commission a custom garment doesn't fit everyone's budget. And so some guys, they have to have a starting point. And I've learned to accept that that's okay. You know, I try not to judge people in general, but I do believe the reason why I go back to, hey, you're not really informing these people properly when it comes to classic menswear, it's because it's like you're being, you're trying to be the authority in that space, and you're giving out incorrect information. I think that's what bothers me the most about it, versus it just being wrong or not looking a certain way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So as somebody who, so to speak, has their kind of like finger on the pulse
Mhm.
in menswear, in that you're not just doing this as a hobby, this is actually what you do for a profession. Where do you see menswear going at the moment? Do you see there any kind of like trends that you would isolate or?
Oh yeah. So trends, the trends that we're seeing, actually, Janan did a post about this last week about, so like flat pastels are coming back. So I would say more muted pastels are coming back, looser cuts, wider lapels, wider trouser leaves. These, I would say, not not retro 70s, but if you can put that in your mind, make it at a modern cut. But yeah, that's where menswear for that's what you're seeing on the runways. Some areas are going to catch on faster than others, some areas won't catch it at all. Like, for example, where I am, it's very conservative, so you won't really see the pastel colors here a lot. But if you're in like a bigger city, you're gonna start seeing men in these beautiful, powder blue suits, and these dreamsicle orange, suits and things like that. Like, these colors are coming back, which I think is great.
I love the way that they look. I could never wear them.
Yeah,
My skin tone is just way too, I don't know if you could tell, but it's way too red. I just got too much red going on already.
my confidence
So
isn't there, to be honest.
yeah, that's another thing. I don't know if I could ever like, I don't know if I could ever actually wear out a pink suit or something like that. But like I'm saying that now, and when I first started buying jackets, I actually purchased a sport coat from ASOS. Is that how you say it? ASOS. Do you know what a website I'm referring to?
ASOS, something like, yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah. So there's a really cheap sport coat that was like pink window pane that I actually
Yeah,
purchased for like 50 bucks. I think I
yeah,
actually did wear it once, but that was the last time. I felt so
yeah.
ridiculous in that damn thing, and I'm sure I looked every bit as ridiculous.
You brought up ASOS. That was one of the places that I like shopped at heavy. I loved ASOS. Loved it.
Yeah, because you're kind of like, oh, I could do classic menswear. Oh, it's only $50 for a sport
Mhm,
coat, and you're like, you
mhm.
don't yet know that it's trash.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm saying. You don't yet know until you get it, and it's like, the model online did not look like this.
Yeah. Okay, so we're closing in on an hour and 15 minutes here, so we should
Yeah,
probably start to wrap up.
yeah.
One thing that I wanted to discuss before we go is I wanted to get a sense of like three things that you think men who are interested in classic menswear can
Mhm,
do to help kind of build out their wardrobe, or if
mhm.
they're already starting in classic menswear, how it is that they can improve their style. That's kind of a
Uh,
very pointed question, kind of
yeah.
putting you on the spot there, but
No,
off
no,
the
no,
top
no,
of your
no.
mind, kind of three things.
You said three things. So the first thing is, if you do have someone local, shop local. And the reason why I say shop local is because they're going to have obviously, so you can go in and actually touch the fabrics, see the shirts, get properly measured, because that's going to help you. Because once you get that one piece that fits great, all the stuff that doesn't fit great, you're not going to want to wear it anymore. So I would say shop local if you can. If you can't, look at brands like, I know you love Spier Mackay. I love them too. They are wonderful. Look at, I would say, go into a suit supply and try to get the best measurements possible. But stick with natural fabrics, your wools, your cottons, a little bit of elastane. Don't go over 6% of elastane is a lot. I know 6% is a small number, but it's a lot of stretch. I would say stick to 3% if you're going to do something with some elastane. But as far as like your wardrobe, if you want to do classic menswear, get you either a gray suit, and if you can afford to get a navy, get you a white dress shirt, a light blue, and get you a striped shirt like this. Get you a nice pair of like brown Oxfords, and just mix and match until you get tired, save you up some money, and just keep going forward. Don't let a bad outfit stop you. Don't let it discourage you. Learn from it, because it's probably not the entire outfit. It's probably one piece. You probably just missed this one piece to the puzzle that needs to just be corrected. Let's see. I know that's probably more than three.
I think that was two technically.
Yeah, two technically, yes. So the third, read.
Mm,
Um, I know it's old fashioned. I know people don't like to, and I'm not saying you actually have to pick up a physical copy, but you can get the audio version or watch the YouTube version of it. But learn, learn about classic menswear, because it's a great foundational piece. Because even if you think there's probably something you don't know, and you can learn from it and grow, and it'll also help you. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run, because you'll learn that, hey, you need to stay in this box instead of going over here. And so reading and learning and just soaking up as much information as you can will help you on the way. Again, because most of the time you'll learn like, oh well, Barry and Jayce did this. I'm not gonna do that. So now I'm gonna go over here. And it'll help you not make a lot of mistakes that other men are making, because they didn't have the resources that you and I now have today.
yeah. Well, there you have it. So I just want to say, Jayce, thank you very much for coming on and speaking with me. I know that you
Absolutely.
are a busy man. You could tell by that awesome looking suit you got on there. I assume that you're wearing a suit. I don't know if you're doing the Zoom thing where you're wearing just like your
No, no, no.
underwear, but
Okay, I definitely thought about it because I had on some tech shorts and they were comfortable. But no, I do have on. I don't have on a full navy suit. I do have on gray trousers, but I do have on a full suit, if you will. Yeah.
yeah. So for those who don't already follow you, where is it that they can find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at esteemed image. That's one word. There's no underscores or periods. It's esteemed image. And you can also follow me on YouTube at esteemed image as well.
Alrighty, and I'll put those down in the description below for you guys. And
Awesome.
once again, Jayce, thanks for coming on and speaking with me.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to say, thank you for having me on tonight, speaking with me, asking me questions and getting to know more about me and what I do. I definitely appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again, but on the flip side.
I'm
So I can
definitely
ask
up
you
for
some
it. I'm
questions.
definitely up for it.
Cool, cool. I definitely appreciate it, man. It's been great.